Now, the improved growth figures for July, August and September this year, very welcome news for our economy. Strong performance in the agriculture sector was one of the main drivers for that modest improvement in our gross domestic product figures. And that's remarkable given the challenges the sector's had to overcome, from false codling moth to storm-damaged railways to port blockages. It's really been a year. But despite an improvement on 2021 exports in the citrus market, it is still lower than hoped. And I'm joined now by the CEO of the Citrus Growers Association of South Africa, Justin Chadwick. Justin, thank you so much for joining us. It has been such a tough year. We know that citrus did better than 2021, but citrus did not do as well as it should have, which I think is such sad news, bearing in mind how much we need economic growth. There have been a number of challenges. What was the biggest challenge?
Yeah, thanks. Good evening, and thanks for having me on your show. Definitely the biggest issue was our freight rates, the cost of actually shipping the fruit into the markets. The shipping lines put their rates up astronomically, in some cases over 100%. And shipping is about 40% of our cost structure. So if you double that, you basically have got no return back to the farm at the end of the day. So although there were a number of challenges, speaking to most growers, that was the one that they single out as being the most impactful.
And is that due to the global price of fuel going up so much in the past year?
Yeah, there are a number of factors that impact on the freight rates. Definitely the fuel price does, because obviously it's a big factor in their costs. The other factor was the congestion around the world, which meant that containers and vessels weren't moving around as much as they should. But really, at the end of the day, it was increasing the prices because they could. We had no alternatives. We had to use those lines, and so they could put the price at peg the price at whatever rate they wanted to.
So with that context, what does that mean for the next year? And can we blame, what is to blame for us not achieving our potential? Are the freight rates part of it, or are there other domestic factors?
Yeah, so I think, we need to address the issues. Hopefully most of them are transitionary in that they're not here to stay, hopefully. They're not systemic in the system. We've already seen some freight rates coming down as the congestion eases, and, as more supply of equipment becomes available. But we're not sitting back and hoping. We've actually got a consultant in assisting us, looking at different options for our shipping in 2023. We just can't be held to ransom by a few shipping lines in the future. So we need to find a solution, and we're working with the other fruit industries to do that. Obviously, the other factors that were impactful, which you mentioned in your lead-up, was around the false codling moth issues with the EU. And we're very thankful to the government for taking this issue to the WTO dispute resolution process. And we're hopeful that will come out with a solution that we can live with going forward. We made huge losses this last year in the fact that new regulation was imposed midway through our season. And as a result, many containers that arrived at the borders were held up. And, if you hold equipment like that, containers and storage, etc., the costs just mount up.
So talk to me about the untapped potential. How many more jobs could we be creating in the citrus industry? And bearing in mind some of those problems are behind us, is it full steam ahead for the next year?
Yeah, I mean, the citrus industry could be a fantastic story for South Africa. We do a long-term projection, so we know how many orchards we've got, how many hectares under citrus there are. We know how the growth of the trees will result in additional fruit. So the Citrus Growers Association board have taken on a sort of Vision 260, which is 260 million cartons in 10 years' time. So at the moment we export 160 million. So we're talking about 10 million cartons per year for the next 10 years. That's what's on the trees. That's coming off the trees. And the only thing that will stop us getting there, or the two biggest factors, is firstly markets. So we need to work very closely with government in opening new markets and making sure we have optimum access into the markets that we presently got. And then logistics, to move another 100 million cartons through our roads and our railway, through our port systems, etc., is going to require more investment. It's going to require efficient utilization of resources. But if that all comes right, we can add another 100,000 jobs, and we can add another sort of 10 to 15 billion rand in exchange earnings. So if everybody pulls together, it could be a fantastic story for South Africa going forward.
Is that your over 10-year projection?
Yeah, so we had, as I say, we had 160 now. In 10 years' time, we'll be at 260, according to what's in the ground at the moment.
You said if that all comes right, speaking of the logistics, there have been such enormous problems with logistics, some of it really out of our control in terms of the floods. We are seeing more intense rain patterns. But of course, we've also seen the impact on the ports after last year's July unrest. We've seen acts of sabotage at the port. Are you seeing the necessary measures in place to protect from a cybersecurity point of view, right down to making sure that the railway line is fixed? Are you seeing enough being done to make sure that the citrus industry reaches its potential next season?
Yeah, we on the sort of port side, we're working very closely with Transnet. I mean, they moved a record crop this year for us, albeit maybe not exactly as timelessly as we wanted to, but it shows that they do have the capacity to move that amount of fruit. We understand that the private sector participation model for Pier 2 in Durban and Coca Port is quite advanced. And really, that's what we need. We need investment and we need management from the private sector to come in and really get those two terminals operating efficiently. On the road and rail side, a big concern because, already anybody driving between Johannesburg and Durban knows what the N3 looks like, where the inside lane is just a conveyor belt of trucks. And we have to take some of those trucks off the road and put them onto rail. So, yes, we do see a lot of repairs, et cetera, going on in terms of the rail infrastructure and, a lot of road works being done to allow us to obviously get better utilization of the roads down to the Durban port. But I do believe there's more that needs to be done. I think there's still a lot to be done to allow us to move that big volume of fruit.
Thank you so much for chatting to us this evening, CEO of the Citrus Growers Association of South Africa, Justin Chadwick there.